Welcome back to part 2 of our Snoke podcast. In this part of our episode, we're going to discuss Snoke's origins and what could be his ultimate agenda. We will overview popular Snoke theories, as well as our own theories, which we strongly believe hold the keys to Snoke's origins and his endgame. As a reminder, I'm Lee, and we're about to join our host Reya and our colleague Michelle. Let's get started. In our last part of our podcast, we were talking about the topic of Sith, and one of the reasons why a lot of the audience, Star Wars fans, have been connecting Snoke and Kylo with the Sith is because of Snoke's resemblance to Ralph McQuarrie's early concept art for Emperor Palpatine. There is quite a resemblance. So this and among many other things has led people to question whether Snoke is an existing character from canon. Is he based on someone from Legends? I think he has the most theories about him circulating right now. And some of them are really good and some are a little crazy and quite bizarre. The bizarre ones are my favorite, actually. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Well, we have another quote from Andy Serkis to his Entertainment Weekly interview. He said that Snoke is not a character that we've already encountered. He's a new character in this universe, very much a newly introduced character. He's aware of what's going on in the respect that he has been around and is aware of prior events. I think it'd be fair to say that he is aware of the past to a great degree.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of theories floating around on the internet as far as who Snoke is. There are people who say that Palpatine somehow survived the events of Return of the Jedi. Big one, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a couple of minutes, is that he's Darth Plagueis. There's a theory that he is Kylo from the future.
That one's awesome. That's why they have the scar, right? Because he's Kylo from the future.
There was one that was going around a little while ago that he's Mace Windu. If you get into other character arcs, he's the son or the father, or that he was Grand Moff Tarkin. I'm just reading off a list here now. He's an Inquisitor. He's somehow Darth Vader. He's Anakin's twin brother.
I think that's a crazy one.
He was a Jedi youngling injured by Anakin Coruscant in the Coruscant Jedi Temple massacre. He's Darth Bane. Here's a name on the list that I don't even know who this is.
I thought Diaz.
Yes. Simalu. Snoke is Leia. That was a big one for a while. Snoke is somehow Maz. Snoke is Darth Maul, or Ezra from Rebels, or Jar Jar. There's been anyone who Snoke might possibly be. Somebody's got a theory on how that person could be Snoke.
That's true. And even poor Jar Jar wasn't spared. He was resurrected from somewhere and brought in Darth Jar Jar. Oh, God. But the Plagueis theory was very popular. I think somebody found a parallel between the musical score of Revenge of the Sith, where Palpatine is talking to Anakin about Dark Plagueis, and a similarity between that and Snoke's theme in The Force Awakens. People have been drawing comparisons and saying that maybe this is the clue that points out to him being Plagueis. Speaking of opera and music, there's one interesting clue. Now, this is the thing that I had mentioned right at the beginning, which has never been brought up before. It has been talked about, but no one has explored it in detail. The Force Awakens composer John Williams, he wrote a choral fanfare. Okay, a 25-member choir sang this for Supreme Leader Snoke. And this choral piece was inspired by a Kipling poem. It was translated into Sanskrit, and there are two versions. There's a long version, a slightly longer version, and a shorter version. And we have managed to make a rough translation in English of those two Sanskrit, the lyrics in Sanskrit. Okay, and now please note that this is a very rough translation, so there could be some margin of error here. Okay. The long one. What sound causes inner sickness in your young that delights in fear or deprivation of the senses? That word could be for either one of them. Who delights in the night, who gives illusions. The second one, the shorter one, is what path speeds your young into inner sickness, who is immortal until death?
So first, let me ask you both, what can we understand from Snoke based on these lines?
Well, from what we know, it sounds an awful lot like what happened to Ben Solo when he was younger. It sounds, from the bits and pieces we've heard, it sounds like Snoke's influence was sort of a sickness that infected him in some way, but we just don't know the details yet.
Yeah, I agree with Michelle. I think that this is a reference to Snoke's relationship with Ben Solo, and I also think it speaks to Snoke's possible endgame. So it speaks of a deeper level of evil than we have seen before for a Star Wars film, because you don't see a larger than life agenda like bringing, a new world order or increasing one's own personal influence over others. So the mention of delights in fear, delights in the night, it sounds like evil not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself.
Those are excellent points. And infecting the young, that line makes Snoke particularly creepy. It's a bit like how there's this in the Anakin and Obi-Wan comic series, the recent one. We have Palpatine watching and preying on Anakin when he was a young boy in the Jedi Temple, corrupting him, trying to corrupt him slowly. So it really gives off that creepy vibe, and I can imagine Snoke trying something like that with Ben Solo, and he also gives the impression of being someone who's old, powerful, and not that easy to kill. I don't know. I mean, that's my thoughts on the lines. But we also these lines are supposed to be based on a Rudyard Kipling poem. So I found a poem that may be a match because it deals with an old, powerful being. It's about sickness, sacrifice. So this poem is called "The Sacrifice of Heb."
Yes, in this poem, a sickness is inflicted by an ancient power because it thinks that people are wicked, and a girl sacrifices her life to save her people. It's a story of a redemption through sacrifice.
Yeah, and the bad in this poem is a character called Taman. I mean, he's it's not a he actually. It's a kind of a power. It's an ancient power, and Taman in the Slavic language means dark or black, and Taman has an unlighted shrine. So I think it represents some sort of a evil place where the dark is worshipped. A bit like Palpatine says that the unknown regions is where the source of the darkness is. It kind of gave me that sort of feeling. The girl who sacrificed herself's name is Bisesa, which in Hindi and Bengali means somebody who's distinguished or unique. So when she hears Taman calling to her, it's a bit how Snoke manipulates Kylo from childhood. He tells Kylo in the novelization that he has promise, he's pure, he's strong, he's unbreakable. It's like he's unique. So in a way, I kind of thought that the girl was a bit like Kylo in the story.
That keeps coming up with Kylo, huh?
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, it's very interesting for sure. He's the damsel in distress here. He's under Snoke's, thrall.
And I'll just throw in a couple of one more thing that Snoke. I mean, no, not Snoke. The poem mentions two strange. Rudyard Kipling made up these two fictional religions for his fictional people in the poem. Something called Kish and Yabosh, and they have something called the Sapphire Shrine and an altar and a mound of skulls. I kind of feel it's an allusion could be drawn to the Jedi and the Sith. And this dark being, this Taman, sends a red horse, which is, in the poem it's sickness, but usually if you look at its meaning in Revelations in the Bible, a fiery red horse is war. So we are talking about a galaxy that has been in conflict from the time of the Old Republic onwards. There's been wars. And the one set of people who could stand up to such powers are the Jedi and the Sith. I mean, one set of people. And if you think about it, the Sith are gone. The Jedi are almost gone. So it's a bit like the shrines of Kish and Yabosh being destroyed by the Red Horse, by wars and trouble.
There's the kind of creepy darkness that we were kind of looking for Snoke. So that'd be really interesting if that's the meaning, huh?
I mean, there could be any set of poems, but I mean, this one just seemed to be.
It seems fitting. Yeah.
Anyway, now coming to our favorite part of the evening, which I mean, most people like the theories. So, do any of you have a favorite theory regarding Snoke?
So my favorite Snoke theory is that I think he had some connection to Gallas Rex, which is the mysterious Imperial leader in Life Debt. To me, there were just too many parallels for there not to be some sort of connection. Now, do I believe that Rax is Snoke? I know that is one of the theories out there. No, I don't believe that he is Snoke. For one thing, I don't think they would have introduced Snoke in a book that way. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that Snoke was pulling Rax's strings even back then. So what do we know about Rax? He was recruited by Emperor Palpatine as a boy after stowing away on an Imperial ship that was leaving Jakku. So yes, Rax was originally from Jakku as well. He ended up going back to Jakku on the Emperor's orders to guard something that the Emperor was excavating there. Later, he sort of disappears, goes off the grid for a while, and then later on in Life Debt, he emerges as being the secret leader of the Imperials after Emperor Palpatine's death. But no one can seem to find out anything about him. And this is seen through the eyes of Rey Sloane, who is sort of our eyes on the ground from the Imperial side of things in Life Debt. Rax communicates with the other Imperial leaders via hologram, so that probably sounds familiar, and he also pits the various Imperial admirals and leaders against each other. And at one point, he even seduced Sloane's young assistant and turned her against Sloane, and she tried to assassinate Sloane based on Rax's orders. So this all just seems like it kind of mirrors some of the things that have been hinted at with Snoke. And Life Debt ends with the Imperial fleet all reassembling near Jakku. So again, I think we're all going back to Jakku for some reason, and I think Snoke's connected.
Okay, let me just, this is going to be a bit long-winded, but let me throw in my favorite theory.
First, let me say that I think that Snoke is Snoke. That is, he's an entirely new character. However, I also feel that his character could be inspired by any or a combination of 3 characters from Legends. All the 3 characters that I'm about to discuss are ancient powerful dark side force users. The first character is Lord Khan, or Scare Khan, whose name interestingly is a nod to the villainous tiger in Kipling's The Jungle Book. He followed a philosophy known as the Rule of the Strong, which predated Darth Bane's Rule of Two. Initially a Jedi Master from Coruscant, he left the Order with his followers because he blamed the Jedi and the Republic for the problems with the galaxy. He then joined the Sith, united the Sith Lords, and formed the Brotherhood of Darkness under his leadership. Snoke was supposed to be handsome at one time. Khan was handsome and had blue eyes, just like Snoke. He was also charismatic and manipulative. In The Force Awakens, Leia mentions that Kylo was manipulated from a very young age by Snoke. It's interesting that both Khan and Snoke are described as manipulative individuals. Khan also used mind tricks to ensure that his followers stayed loyal to him. However, he was insecure and eventually the dark side drove him insane. Finally, in a bid to destroy the Jedi once and for all, he and the remaining members of the Brotherhood of Darkness were tricked by Darth Bane into using a weapon known as a thought bomb. It was a ritual where many Sith Lords focused their willpower, unleashing a large amount of the dark side energy, destroying all Force sensitives within the blast radius of the bomb, and trapping their souls. A similar ritual is hinted in the canon novel
Weapon of the Jedi,
where a ritual is described in which some sorcerers summoned a demon in the Jedi temple on Deveron, but the spell went wrong and the souls of the sorcerers performing the ritual were imprisoned forever. This thought bomb ritual ended up killing Lord Khan, the Brotherhood, and several Jedi. However, Darth Bane was far enough to escape and he then established the Rule of Two. What is interesting is that Khan's consciousness escaped the trap and subsequently appeared to Darth Bane, which means that his spirit was no longer imprisoned and was free to reappear at some point of time. The second character I would like to discuss is a Legends RPG character named Blessed Toxmal. Pardon any mispronunciation here. He is the Lord Keeper and one of the oldest members of a darkside group called the Sorcerers of Rand, or Randites. This group is based in the unknown regions and trace their origins to darkside practitioners who fled Coruscant after being defeated in prehistoric times. This group occupy a void in the unknown regions named the Gunninga Gap, which has a similar name to a primordial abyss in Norse mythology. We discussed earlier that Snoke means to snoop in Norwegian, so the Norse references seem strangely appropriate here. This place has drifting moon trees and is the location of an ancient powerful dark side work called the Tauranic Codex. I wonder if there is some connection between force trees and drifting moon trees. Also, I wonder if there could be some ancient powerful object like the Tauranic Codex hidden near that burnt looking tree stump that has been seen in leaked set photos from episode 8 that should be considered. The Randites worship the dark, which is the opposite of the Force. The Force, both the dark side and the light, together represent life. The dark differs from the dark side of the Force as it represents entropy and ultimate destruction. The Randites could be compared to a doomsday cult who want to destroy the galaxy, effectively destroying the Force as well. In Legends, this group had ancient relics including Rakathan artifacts which they sold to collectors to finance their activities. Blessed Toxmap's description somewhat matches that of Snoke, but since he has no backstory, I'll just proceed with about his physical description. Here is a quote that describes what he looks like. His body had been so destroyed by the dark side of the Force that his skin was nothing but powdery dry flakes which fell away from his body in rivulets, while his eyes were simply sunken holes. He was noted for being tall, and though he was bipedal, his species was unknown. His powers included Force Sense, Telekinesis, Farsight, Force Lightning, Force Grip, Force Rage. He was immune to mind tricks and used dark flies that inhabited his body to suffocate his enemies to death. He could communicate with and fully control in many individuals at the same time from a great distance. The Randites also used an arcane technique for channeling the dark in a sustained direct burst called a dark shear strike. It caused the victim to suffer the cumulative damage of years of atrophy. Armor became rusted and brittle, power cells would drain, machinery would jam, an individual could age 30 years in an instant, body parts could fall in the middle of a battle. The damage could be reversed with Bacta, but the person would require prosthetic replacements for damaged body parts. This makes me wonder whether Lorsan Tekka met members of this group on his travels, as it would explain his sudden aging as observed by Kylo and Leia in the movie and comics respectively. In canon, we know that Palpatine has excavated the levels below the Jedi Temple, reaching level 1, an uninhabited area with an ancient shrine. He began to increasingly spend time there and got messages from the unknown regions which he felt was the source of the dark side, and he sent groups there to set up research facilities. Palpatine also collected ancient Sith artifacts. In Aftermath, one of his advisors, Yup Tashu, had a demonic Sith mask, and by Aftermath Part 2, Life Death, he was muttering to himself, writing on walls and communicating with something, like a crazy person. Even Lando comes across an ancient helmet created by a Sith sculptor named Lord Momin that possesses people who stand near it and make them kill loved ones. This can be found in the recent canon Lando comics. While I have absolutely no sympathy for Palpatine, I feel he became a pawn of these kind of dark side users in the unknown regions. After his death, the remaining Imperials fled there to the unknown regions to seek out the source of the darkness. So if by any chance these Randites are a cult to which Snoke belongs, I would think that these Imperials would have met them, and maybe these Randites are guiding the remnants of the Imperials and now have formed the First Order. The last character I want to discuss is my favorite character of the three, named Zendor, who led the first schism of the Jedi Order. Zendor wanted to study all aspects of the Force, the Ashla or the light side, the Bogan or the dark side, as well as other schools of the Force. He studied with the Bendu, who is now canon. In a form of him is canon. He met the Mortis Celestials, the father, daughter, son, who appeared in the Clone Wars animated TV show. We are also seeing a lot more of different types of Force users like the Church of the Force, and we don't know what Chirrut Imwe in Rogue One, whether he's a Force user or he's part of some Force believing group, but we're seeing a lot of this, so maybe this is a sign of something to come. So anyway, going back to Zendor, he asked the Jedi Council permission to set up a school to study all aspects of the Force, and the Jedi Council naturally refused. So he and some of his followers went to an inner planet named Letau and set up a school to study all aspects of the Force with a focus on the Bogan. His school grew really popular, and the Jedi Council didn't like this and decided to destroy the school and all its members, inciting the Republic to join them in the attack. Zendor wanted to avoid bloodshed and tried to take the fight to the Jedi's planet itself. But the Jedi attacked first, killing him and sending his soul into chaos, the underworld of the dark side. And in chaos, he went insane. Palpatine had an ancient frieze in his office in Revenge of the Sith that depicted an ancient battle. The fact that it's an ancient battle has been confirmed in the novel Tarkin. Maybe this is a depiction of that ancient battle where Zendor fell and his people got defeated. Speaking of his people, Zendor's followers had many names: Dark Knight, Legions of Leto, etc. I feel they might have been the inspiration for the Knights of Ren, since both are ancient orders. When the Legions of Leto were defeated in Legends, they fled to the unknown regions. Zendor's spirit is supposed to have returned once again at some point many centuries later, in the form of the Dark Underlord, with his Black Knights. But once again he was defeated by the Jedi. Also, Leto has been brought into canon in the Servants of the Empire novels, and is part of a chant sung by Imperial cadets referencing an ancient battle. So that is quite interesting. Okay, Snoke was supposed to be handsome before he turned into that ugly looking character we see right now. So like Lord Gunn, Zendor was also handsome. The only physical description we have of him is that he had pale skin and dark hair. Some accounts mention him as human and some as humanoid. We have the same confusion with regards to Snoke as well. Zendor also broke the Jedi code of non-attachment because he fell in love with a fellow Force user. She wasn't a Jedi though. She fought by his side, and when he was killed, she used a powerful amulet to kill the Jedi who had killed Zendor. She took revenge because of his death as well as their defeat. Now, I'll digress a little here. I want to go into the topic of operas. Operas are a very big thing in Star Wars, and in Legends, the first Jedi schism was the theme for several operas in Coruscant. In the prequel trilogy, Palpatine manipulated Anakin in the Coruscant Opera House with a ballet named Squid Lake in the background. Squid Lake is obviously inspired by Swan Lake, a sad tale of lost love, deceit and death, similar to what happened to Anakin and Padme. So we know that operas have a deeper significance than just being a pretty background in front of which the action happens. There are deeper meanings. So now let us look at some recent canon novels. In Lost Stars, we learn of an opera called The Altar and Chalice, which is about the morality of self-sacrifice and the repression of desire. And then in Life Debt, Gallas Rex listens to the cantata of Cora Vesera, which is about a dark witch on an unnamed world who refused to become Jedi, but neither would she join the Sith. It is a tale of birth, death, and all the glories found between those poles: love, passion, war, and above all else revenge. Revenge against the Sith who took her loved ones, revenge against the Jedi for standing idly by and refusing to protect her because she would not join their ranks, revenge against the galaxy for being as imperfect and impure as she had feared. These extracts remind me a bit of a real-world opera named Armida, based on a poem called Jerusalem Delivered, where a pagan sorceress falls in love with a Christian knight. You could think of it as maybe a dark side Force user falling in love with a Jedi master. Armida involved love, betrayal, death, and even powerful magical trees like the Force tree. Cora is another name for Persephone, and Vesera means broom in Portuguese. So this dark witch might have been a Persephone, or since we are looking at Norse mythology, an Idun type character connected both to sacred trees as well as dark mysticism. I think there is a Hades Persephone type of romance that ended tragically. The frieze in Palpatine's office depicts a Sith witch in the ancient battle. What if this Sith witch is Cora Vesera from the Coruscant Opera? Jakku, which has been featuring a lot both in the movie as well as recent canon literature, was once a green planet with lots of oceans and water bodies thousands of years prior to the events of The Force Awakens, until it was turned into a desert. This was briefly mentioned in Rey's survival guide as well, and in Life Death, I think. I need to go back to that. It is also the last stopping point for starships before the unknown regions. The Tidos on the planet know the real history of the place and worship an angry goddess named Reya. It kind of sounds similar to Rey, but that is something we need to look into maybe in a subsequent podcast. But going ahead, Reya was held responsible for the deserts on Jakku as well as the destructive storms on the planet. In the recent Vader comics, the Tusken Raiders worshipped Darth Vader as an angry spirit after he slaughtered Tuskens on 2 occasions. Similarly, the legend of Reya could be based on an actual event where the planet was damaged by a vengeful female Force user. Now let us look at the 3 characters. We know that Snoke is neither Jedi nor Sith, nor is Zendor or Blessed Toxmap. In the case of Zendor, the Sith didn't even exist at the time. Zendor was a dark Jedi. And in the case of Blessed Toxmap, he believes in the dark. He doesn't even believe in the Force. So both of them definitely qualify. Lord Khan was initially a Jedi, then a Sith. Now, since Snoke is not a Sith, this question arises, how can he qualify? But what if Lord Khan was so disillusioned with both the Jedi and the Sith because of all the betrayal he faced and felt that he belonged to neither? We have an example in canon of a character who was betrayed by the Sith and now doesn't identify with the Jedi or the Sith. I'm talking about Darth Maul. He has mentioned in Rebels that he's neither Jedi nor Sith. So any of these 3 would definitely qualify to be a Snoke-like character. Now, going into his motivations, what if Snoke only wanted, initially, had started off with good intentions, only wanting to balance the light and the dark side, wanting to bring peace to the galaxy, but he and his followers could have been betrayed by the Sith, the Jedi, the Republic, depending on which of the 3 characters we are looking at. It depends, it could be a combination. And this betrayal could have resulted in his death, his insanity, the death of his love interest. He would definitely want to destroy everything. Anyone who suffered that much, I don't mean it in a sympathetic way. I think this is somebody who literally has gone down a terrible path and has become a terrible person. And I think he blames the Force and wants to destroy it as well, and destroy everything in the galaxy. He's on a complete destructive binge. He's irredeemable you could say. I imagine Snoke as this ancient, powerful, dark being watching events unfold in the galaxy over the centuries, controlling outcomes. This is not somebody who's just getting angry and throwing tantrums. We are talking about someone who's very deliberate. We've discussed how deliberate he is already. So he is sitting there, he's controlling outcomes so that he can eventually reach an apocalyptic scenario and destroy everything. That is what I believe. Also, Snoke's body, there's another thing that struck me, that Snoke's body looks very decrepit from long-term use of the dark side. What if Snoke is now on the lookout for a suitable body or vessel to occupy? Therefore, he's kind of hunting around for a powerful Force user to be a host body. What if he has some evil purpose, some kind of evil intention towards Kylo, and he's just priming him and prepping him with the evil intent of eventually possessing him? These are my thoughts on Snoke, and what I feel are the theories that one should seriously look at and haven't really been explored till now.
So, wow, Reya, first of all, thank you for that awesome explanation. For our viewers and listeners, in case you hadn't noticed, Reya is actually our resident expert in legends. She's like a walking encyclopedia. This kind of background stuff is not things that the general audience is familiar with, I don't think. I don't think the average Star Wars fan might be familiar with all of this. So I guess that, we've been thinking, well, Snoke isn't bad enough, Snoke isn't scary enough, he's not creepy enough, but he doesn't measure up to Palpatine or whoever. But if this is true, if what you're saying is right, he might just end up being the biggest big bad that's been, his agenda, the extent of his evil is really dark stuff. And we've been hearing about how episode 8 will be so much darker. So I think this makes perfect sense, and I really think you're onto something here. And as for the 2 characters that you mentioned, I think that Blessed Toxmalb or whatever is, it sounds pretty interesting and very much in line with a lot of what we've heard about Snoke. With the Zendor character, I think, it's a very cool background story, but I feel like just my opinion, I doubt that they'd make Snoke a sympathetic figure. I think that he's going to be like the irredeemable kind of big bad, because we already have Kylo, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think they would portray that in the movie, but maybe in like supplemental materials they would give you the background.
No, I agree with that. I just feel like, in Pirates of the Caribbean, if you see Davy Jones. Now, Davy Jones is a character with a very similar sympathetic backstory, but he becomes so irredeemable and so evil that you don't care. I mean, he also was, because of love only, he ended up in the position he was in. Yet he becomes so horrendous. So, I mean, I kind of see Snoke as and I do agree with you. I don't think this backstory, even if they do go with the Zendor route, would come in a movie. I mean, at least not the details. They may show a, blink and miss kind of thing. But maybe a novel called Snoke.
Yeah. Well, I'd read it. I can tell you that much after your explanation. That sounds awesome. Well, I know there was another theory that that one of our contributors, who's actually also a podcaster, had
Lena?
brought up. Yeah, Lena. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
No. Go ahead. I think I've said a lot.
So, in the era of the Old Republic, there was a character named Vitiate, who was a Dark Lord of the Sith. He later goes on to be known as Valkorion and reconstitutes the Sith Empire, ruling it for over 1,300 years as the Sith Emperor. Valkorion, he has a lot of cool quotes, and here's one. My life spans millennia. Legions have risen to test me. My ascendance is inevitable. A day, a year, a millennium, it matters not. I hold the patience of stone and the will of stars. Your striving is insignificant. Let your death be the same. So this is a pretty hardcore dude. By the time he becomes Valkorion, he is basically beyond the whole Sith thing. He's a spirit, and he looks like whatever body he is occupying. And he believes in using the entire Force, not just the dark side. And his corrupted children use yellow lightsabers. Here's another interesting quote from Vitiate, which, kind of a little parenthesis here, I think that name is awesome for a character. For language nerds like me who might be listening, the word vitiate means to spoil or debase, so to ruin. The root of vitiate, if you're thinking it sounds like vicious, it does. It's because it comes from the Latin vitium, which means vice. So vitiate, vicious, all come from the root word vice in Latin. So there's that theme about corruption again. And it kind of reminds me of what we were saying about the Sanskrit verse that we were talking about in relation to Snoke in part one of our podcast. It talks about evil that delights in corrupting and infecting the young. So there's a common theme here. Anyway, here's the quote from Vitiate. You discern a fraction of reality. Beyond these stars exist other galaxies, other worlds, other beings. I will experience or ignore them as I wish. I will spend eternity becoming everything. A farmer, an artist, a simple man. When the last living thing in the universe finally dies, I will enjoy peace and wait for the cycle to begin again. So that's pretty intense.
Pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Another bad. Actually, the funny thing is that he actually ruled the Eternal Empire, and the term Eternal Empire has been recently mentioned in a Darth Vader comic. So maybe, even we cannot eliminate the possibility that we are seeing some version of Valkorion turn up in maybe a Snoke or something. There is definite evidence pointing to it. And Making Star Wars recently reported a rumor of First Order Imperial Guards with a strange visor on them with under armor and cuffed sleeves and armor under the robes. Valkorion, Vitiate, his Imperial Guards do wear an attire that resembles this. So this is another theory that definitely has a lot of potential. We also have one more person actually, Sylvia, who has mentioned, this is a theory that nobody has looked at, about an alien philosopher from an unidentified planet in the RPG. Again, it's legends. He was supposed to be one of the greatest minds of his species and part of a science fleet named the Prana Alexander. Now, the name Prana has been doing the rounds ever since we've heard of King Prana.
Yeah.
Now, this guy vanished 500 years before the Galactic Civil War. He was in cryo-freeze, and they brought him back. And he was persuaded by the rebels to get his species to help. So, could he have actually been a devious character? Because we don't know. I'm sorry to just quickly bring this in. Palpatine kept the statues of 4 ancient philosophers in his study, and they were not good people. So, God knows if this is also one of those bad ancient philosophers, and went on to become Snoke. I mean, I thought this was a pretty good theory as well.
Yeah, no, that's pretty. I think you guys are right. I mean, whoever Snoke ends up being, it's more than likely that it'll be inspired. I don't think they would like directly translate the character from Legends into Snoke in film, but it would make sense that they would draw inspiration from pre-existing characters that are there that the majority of the audience, like the general audience, wouldn't be familiar with, and they would just repurpose the character for the sequel trilogy rather than starting from scratch. But now, if I gotta be honest with you guys, my favorite Snoke origins theory is still that Snoke is Luke. Because we haven't seen them both in the same scene. Just saying. Probably Luke. No, I'm just kidding, but really interesting.
You're going the Dark Empire way. in a way of speaking. I mean, not that Luke was evil there, but yeah, we see Dark Luke, so maybe. But that's not a bad possibility either. Though, I mean, I think a lot of fans would beat me up for saying this, but I mean, the OT3 are sacred. but that would be an interesting twist.
Well, more interesting would be Leia as Snoke for sure.
Oh Lord! Oh yeah, that one was popular. I think Carrie Fisher had put up some pictures of her in a dark robe, and everyone said, "Oh, there she is. She's Snoke. She's the villain. She's the big bad." Okay, now now that we have explored all sorts of strange theories about Snoke, let's go into what his agenda is. I mean, is he really an evil fellow? Is it all smoke and mirrors? Do we have something to look forward to in episode 8 and 9?
Well, in an interview, Andy Serkis had this to say about Snoke. Supreme Leader Snoke is quite an enigmatic figure, and strangely vulnerable at the same time as being quite powerful. Obviously, he has a huge agenda. He has suffered a lot of damage. As I said, there's a strange vulnerability to him, which belies his true agenda, I suppose. So, what is that agenda? I think the most obvious one, possibly, is to destroy the New Republic and the Resistance. Could he also want to destroy the galaxy itself? There's a quote from the Force Awakens novelization. Kylo Ren, I watched the Galactic Empire rise and then fall. The gullible prattle on about the triumph of truth and justice and of individualism and free will, as if such things were solid and real instead of simple subjective judgments. The historians have it all wrong. It was neither poor strategy nor arrogance that brought down the Empire. You know too well what did. Ren nodded once. Sentiment. Yes, such a simple thing, such a foolish error of judgment. A momentary lapse in an otherwise exemplary life. Had Lord Vader not succumbed to emotion at the crucial moment, had the Father killed the Son, the Empire would have prevailed, and there would be no threat of Skywalker's return today.
But in addition to destroying the Resistance, the galaxy, I'm still a little set on the fact that maybe Snoke is looking around also. In addition to this, he's looking for a new body. I mean, he can't permanently be sitting in that decrepit form, and I kind of have these ugly. Maybe it's a bit of my dark side thinking, but I kind of, if there's a nice, good-looking, strong force sensitive running around who is a balance of light and dark. I mean, obviously, and I know how to get into bodies, and I am a withered old prune. I would obviously want to get into that.
Oh God, run away, Kylo!
I'm so evil. I don't know. I mean, there's also the option that he really needs Kylo's help also. I mean, in Tarkin, there was a kind of an ancient Sith ritual that was mentioned. Something about bringing the dark side and harnessing its power to rule for tens and thousands of years. So maybe he just wants Kylo's help after all. I mean,
yeah, when I saw TFA, it became clear to me that what Snoke's goal in that movie was to prevent, Luke Skywalker from returning. That's why the whole thing with the map, we have to find this map, is to prevent the Resistance having a way of connecting with Luke for Luke to come back. So, but why does he want Luke to stay away? Well, he said it himself in that speech to Hux and Kylo. If Skywalker returns, then the new Jedi will rise. So that seems to be the thing that he doesn't want to happen as a kind of short-term goal. But why would he want that? I mean, is it because he wants to rule everything, or is it because, as the poem that you read to us, Reya hinted, is it because he wants to promote chaos and darkness and the destruction of the galaxy? And, that would be way more interesting to me. I mean, if he wants to just stay in power, make himself more important, influential, that's pretty typical bad guy stuff. We see that in real life. And we've seen that. And we've seen that in other Star Wars movies. But if his ultimate goal is to create chaos and entropy, that would be way more sinister. And, I doubt that anybody who's working for him right now, including Kylo Ren and even Hux, is aware that they would be essentially working towards their own destruction. And that just adds another level of creepiness to the whole thing.
In fact, I'll just throw this thing in there that Palpatine, if you think about it, what if Palpatine himself, Palpatine, Dooku, all of them joined the dark side with the intention of ending corruption or helping their planet? They all started with a very good plan, and then they went from bad to worse. What if all this time, with all the stock of helmets that possess people, or masks that make people scribble on walls and go crazy? What if Snow? All these people have been manipulated over the generations and centuries. Somebody or maybe a group of people have been playing the galaxy, playing one person against the other. What if at the end of it, Palpatine turns out to be a pawn in the? Not that he's a good guy; he'll still always be the evil emperor. But what if he was played? Sometimes I wonder. What if Snoke is that evil? Anyway, I think we've kind of discussed Snoke from various, all sorts of angles. We've dissected him. Do you have anything else to add? I think we should slowly wind it up.
I think a lot of people, and I'm including myself, felt that Snoke is like the weak link among the new crop of characters in The Force Awakens, although to me, Maz Kanata is a close second. But I'm not going to hate on Maz because this is Snoke's podcast, but I feel like the two of them were, the more poorly executed of the characters, and certainly compared to Palpatine, full disclosure, Palpatine's probably my second favorite character in all of Star Wars. I feel like compared to Palpatine as a big bad, Snoke is really just underwhelming, and I think a lot of people have kind of underestimated him for that reason, because what we saw was not that much. I think that would be a mistake to underestimate him. I think that going forward, we'll find out that there is much more to Snoke than we've seen in The Force Awakens. There's still 2 more episodes left, so he may well turn out to be a very compelling and impressive mastermind, like all these great theories hint. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. There are a lot of Snoke theories floating around out in the internet right now. A lot of them have to do with who Snoke secretly is, and I think Snoke is Snoke. But we still don't know very much about him. He was presented as very mysterious in The Force Awakens, and I think we'll learn a lot more about him in Episode 8. The only things that I'm fairly confident about with him at this point is that he probably had something to do with what happened to Rey's parents, and that he has some connection to Jakku and possibly Gallas Rex.
Definitely, and I also feel they haven't revealed much about Snoke, because I think he's one of the many mystery boxes, and like we've discussed before, he's not some fellow who Kylo's going to kill in the beginning of Episode 8, where then Kylo puts on Vader mask, wears Vader's cloak. But that rumor is doing the rounds and turns into Vader version 2. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Snoke is going to be the big bad or one of the big bads, and he's going to be a really scary one. He's going to be scarier than Palpatine, Maul, or any other Sith ever was. And that's really telling something, because I honestly, my favorite villain in Star Wars is Maul. So, because I've seen him go from a thug to a very evolved villain now in Rebels. So, I'm kind of thinking Snoke is much worse than all of them put together. I think we have said a lot on Snoke. So, this concludes our discussion, I think, on Supreme Leader Snoke. Now we will have a section which is a newly introduced question and answer session, where we will answer the questions of viewers on either previous podcast topics or any other Star Wars related queries. Lee, would you like to take over this part?
Yeah, so we got a great comment from a viewer named Charlotte following the Rey and Kylo Ren as Adam and Eve podcast. In that podcast, as a reminder, the team discussed the idea of the original couple, meaning Rey as Adam and Kylo Ren as Eve, who tempts Adam, and the exploration of the nature of evil and how the original couple are tempted by it. So now on to Charlotte's comment. First off, I thoroughly enjoy listening to your podcasts. They are always interesting and well done. It also helps with the long wait until we get definitive answers from the 8th movie itself. You mentioned a couple of movies in your second Adam and Eve podcast. It made me think of another movie that I don't know if you guys have seen called Legend. Well, Charlotte, first of all, thank you for your compliment. We really appreciate it. The majority of us had not seen Legend, but after my conversation with you by email, I'm personally going to check it out. The background of that movie, for those who aren't familiar, is the following. Legend is a 1985 fantasy and sci-fi film directed by Ridley Scott and starring Tom Cruise. And it's basically a dark fairy tale. It was not commercially successful, but it won a few awards, including an Academy Award, a couple of BAFTAs, and Best Cinematography by the British Society of Cinematographers. What happens in Legend is basically the big bad in that movie, voiced by the invaluable Tim Curry, by the way, is called the Lord of Darkness, and he's currently banished in hell, and he needs 2 unicorn horns to be able to free himself. So in an idyllic paradise setting, Princess Lily meets with her lover, Tom Cruise's character, who's named Jack, and he shows her 2 unicorns, and we know unicorns are the embodiment of purity and goodness. Lily runs over to touch them in spite of being told not to by Jack. She causes them to become distracted, and that gives an opportunity for Darkness's minions to shoot the unicorns with poisonous darts. The unicorn stallion dies, and his mare gets captured and brought to Darkness. Then the land becomes frozen in an apocalyptic winter. Lily ends up running away and gets captured by Darkness, ends up going to hell with him, and is tempted by him there. She ends up resisting him and tricks him into freeing the unicorn mare. Jack is the plucky hero who saves the day. Darkness ends up being banished from the land, but before he goes, he tells Jack that he lives in everyone, and so he cannot truly be defeated. And this is one of the points that Charlotte brought up in her comment. So what does this all mean? If you think about our analysis of the idea of Rey being Adam and Kylo Ren being Eve the Temptress, and what we've just spoken about regarding Snoke as the embodiment of evil, there are some clear parallels to be drawn here. Star Wars Connection podcaster Felix made an awesome analysis of the themes in Legend that pertain to our discussion of the sequel trilogy as a dark fairy tale centered around Rey and Kylo Ren. Felix writes, "The Lord of Darkness is a one-dimensional villain. He's a Snoke. In this film, darkness is not representative of a darkness that fits an Eastern or Jungian view. It's straight up evil, and his goal is to rid the world of daylight and goodness." So we have a couple who begin in a lush forest and encounter darkness. I could see Princess Lily as a Prince Ben Solo or Eve figure, and Lily approaching the unicorn is an example of the loss of innocence that the Tree of Knowledge represents in the story of Adam and Eve. There is some interesting symbolism of sexuality in that Jack and Lily are suggested to be sexually involved in the fertile forest. We have a scene with Jack kissing Lily, and he's positioned above her. And after their encounter with darkness, each is tempted in some way. Lily is tempted with a dress given to her by darkness. The dress symbolizes beauty and sexual power, whereas Jack is tempted to be unfaithful to Lily by Una, a fairy who's basically just kind of throwing herself at him. So there seems to be an idea of 2 young people whose sexual involvement in the beginning of the film is wholesome and pure and for their own enjoyment. And then after being tempted, that sexuality is an inappropriate or subverted sexuality. So, for example, sex for power, attention, or infidelity. That aligns with Milton's Paradise Lost in that Adam and Eve were having sex prior to the snake showing up, but after they consumed the apple, it changed their experience into one of base carnality. Also interesting is that Ben's use of the Force, which we know is being used as a sexual metaphor in The Force Awakens, was presumably pure before Snoke got involved. So Snoke tempts Kylo, and now Kylo uses the Force in inappropriate ways. Both couples are children who are coming into adulthood. Kylo and Rey, specifically, are, quote, finding the Force, right, which is what Daisy Ridley famously said in her interview regarding Kylo and Rey. They're finding the Force together, and they have a metaphorical marriage when he carries her across the threshold into, well, his spaceship, and then they have a consummation of their union on the cliff with that very sexually charged imagery that we see during their duel. Kylo is presented as an angry, entitled young man. He says, "I can take whatever I want." His development is in returning to the light. So going back to an appropriate sexuality in his use of the Force by putting Rey selflessly above him, which is what we're expecting to see, those of us who predict a redemption in Kylo Ren's future as he completes his character arc. Meanwhile, Rey had a flirtation with darkness during her duel with Kylo and left her mark on his face. She'll be further tempted into darkness in Episode 8. How precisely remains to be seen. We can presume the pair will find balance together in Episode 9. Another interesting bit of symbolism that our viewer Charlotte called attention to is a scene in Legend where Lily throws her ring into a pond, and these are feminine symbols. So she says that she will marry whoever retrieves her ring, and Jack immediately dives in so that he can get her ring and prove his love. This is an example of male diving into the sacred feminine. In Episode 8, we're expecting Kylo and Rey to also take a dunk in the sacred feminine, symbolizing cleansing and balance with the female principle. So Kylo Ren, as we said, is an angry young man. He's wielding a negative masculine symbol. Before he can set that aside and evolve and pick up the positive masculine symbol, he has to come into balance with the feminine. This is something that we see very often in epic stories where we have heroes going into caves. In Harry Potter, there's a moment where we see a stag Patronus crossing the lake to protect him, etc. So the Jungian concept of anima meeting animus. This is stuff that we discussed in depth in our Adam and Eve podcast, which I invite you to check out if you haven't already. And also, I'd like to add, there's another cool similarity between Legend and The Force Awakens. So we find if Rey is Jack and Kylo is Princess Lily, we meet both couples in a beautiful and lush, enchanted forest type situation. So for Kylo and Rey, that's Takodana. And then at the height of the conflict, we find them in a frozen, apocalyptic landscape, which for Kylo and Rey is Starkiller Base. So there's a lot of fairy tale imagery in The Force Awakens, and that's something we've explored in other episodes. And hopefully we'll continue to explore going forward because there's plenty more to be said. So there you have it. Very cool parallels between these two movies. We want to thank our viewer Charlotte for her awesome observation that introduced many of us to a movie that seems to be worth checking out if you're into this epic dark fairy tale genre that Star Wars can fit so neatly into. We'd like to remind you, if you have a question or comment, please share it with us, and you never know, you might be featured in our next Q&A.
Wow, Lee, I have Legends. I have not seen it in years. I'm going to watch it today. That's all from us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'd like to thank all our team members and contributors, particularly Star Wars Connection members Maria and Manna for their help, and most of all, you, our viewers. If you like our podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any future discussions. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Mixcloud. We'd like to hear from you. So if you have any questions for us, you can leave it in the comment section on YouTube, or you can email it to us at starwarsconnection09@gmail.com. And until next time, may the Force be with you.